Dwayne "Dog" Chapman, Dog the Bounty Hunter, and his team of professionals are pursuing the country's most wanted fugitives in a new series called Dogs Most Wanted. It's a bittersweet premiere, though. It is also the last project that Dwayne worked on with his late wife, Beth.
For years, Dog the Bounty Hunter was America's wildest reality television show. Viewers watched criminals getting chased down by Dwayne "Dog" Chapman and fancied the explosive family outbursts. But when the cameras stopped rolling, everything changed. Cast members dealt with personal tragedies and controversies they did not see coming. But when the show ended, some remained in the spotlight, and others just took a break. What exactly happened to the cast members? How different are their lives from the ones fans remember? Join us as we discuss the present lives of cast members from Dog the Bounty Hunter. Top dog, Dwayne. Today, Dwayne Dog is 73 years old and living with his legacy as a bounty hunter. While he has been spotted at local manhunts recently, his legacy isn't what it used to be anymore. Old age, children going their separate ways, and a life without Beth seemed to be his recent reality. But just before his world began to unravel, how did it all begin? Being the face of an enterprise that chases fugitives all over the country can be a really daunting job. But Dwayne just seemed to never really care about that. He was competitive and almost incapable of letting go of anything. Once he locks on to any fugitive, then it's curtains for them. But he wasn't just keeping America safe on his own, was he? Although he was the face of the franchise, he had the support of his family, specifically his wife, Beth Chapman, his son, Leland, and his brother, the eccentric Tim Youngblood Chapman. But just how exactly does any network take on a show that creates content around hunting fugitives? Dog appeared on an A&E hit series called Take This Job, debuting his craft as a top fugitive hunter and bail bondsman. At that point, the network needed no convincing. They were certain they had just unearthed a star, and 2010's reality television definitely thanks them for it. After the show premiered in 2004, viewers suggested it was unlike anything they had ever seen before. Who even makes a show about chasing fugitives anyway? It was completely new water for Dog to have a franchise named after him, but he absolutely crushed it alongside his family. Suddenly, everyone knew the Chapman family, and the reality television landscape was changed forever. However, after 8 whole seasons of action, the network decided against continuity. But why would the network suddenly pull the plug on a successful show? At first, there were no responses, just the good old radio silence PR move. But it didn't take long for rumors of a disagreement between the network and Dog to reach a climax. According to Dog and Beth, the show ended because they could not reach a favorable contract with the network. But it gets even worse than that. Dog, who started his show with his kids, lost his sons, Leland and Dwayne Chapman Jr., after a massive disagreement with their stepmother, Beth. Consequently, his 2 sons left the show in 2011, citing irreparable damage to their relationships. Although he found his way back to television in 2013, creating the hit show Dog and Beth, On the Hunt, it lasted only until 2015. Even though he remained active in bail bonds and fugitive recovery, he chose to stay out of the spotlight, managing his foundations and actively using social media. But not every Chapman got a happy ending. Beth Chapman, the dog's tightest leash. Talking about power couples that made the world around them tick, Beth and Dog were the perfect duo. While he often had a gung-ho approach to nearly every fugitive situation, she was different. Beth has always had a thing for planning, and sometimes taking a step back to see the whole board, even when urgency hits. She just preferred a calmer approach to the business than throwing the kitchen sink at it. To most fans of the show, she was the perfect match for Dog. Although he wasn't particularly wrapped neatly around her finger, she knew how to nudge him a little bit towards decency. Maybe Dog was indeed the action, blood, and sweat of every bounty hunter. She was the eloquent brains of the operation. Although their personalities clashed often on television, one thing was certain. They were too in love to ever consider the concept of divorce. While they did get separated once when they dated, getting back together and getting married in 2006 only proved to them that they were meant for each other. But even though fans got sucked into the drama of their job and their marriage on screen, they never hid their imperfections as a family. Often, Beth clashed with her stepson, Dwayne Jr., over creative differences and his role in the family business. Insiders speculated that he wanted just as much power as Beth had on the creative side. However, there are even darker rumors that leaned somewhere towards money. Although unconfirmed, some sources speculated that their real tiff ensued from their differences over how much Dwayne Jr. should be paid on the show. While Beth mostly saw past conflicts and moved on with the show, her spat with her stepson wasn't just any conflict she could move on from. One person had to go, and Beth wasn't moving, so Dwayne Jr. did in 2011. Fast forward to 2013, when she starred on Dog and Beth on the Hunt. She was not able to get Dwayne back on the show, or her stepdaughter Lissa, who had chosen to start a new life as an author, and finally moved to Hollywood to pursue a career. But Beth wasn't the type to give in to the pressure. Even a broken family could not stop her from working with other bounty hunters and building a whole new on-screen life with Dog. But after August 22, 2015, the show came to an end. 2 years after the show, Beth was diagnosed with throat cancer. At the time, it was not terminal, and it went into remission the same year. However, that was the beginning of the end. Fans had always anticipated her return to the screen, and she was indeed ready for a comeback. At the time, she was shooting a new series with her husband, Dogs Most Wanted. But on June 22, 2019, everything changed. The cancer had spread to her lungs. While she filmed her new show, she was hospitalized and placed in a medically induced coma at the Queen's Medical Center in Honolulu, where she later died from complications from the illness on June 26th. Even though the family was broken, she had always had Dog in her corner, and he seemed to bear the most weight when she died. He was by her side, holding her hands, when she whispered, "Let me go," before she drew her last breath. Maybe Dog did survive, but he felt something break in him that night. He lost Dwayne Jr. a long time ago, who preferred to be on his own anyway. What happens when the son, who helped to build the empire, decides to walk away from it? Zero compromise. Dwayne Jr. It takes more than grit and a handsome face to take on the world of bounty hunting and being a bondsman. The movies definitely make it seem cool, but the Chapmans have mostly stared death in the face 1,000,000 times, and won each time, with Dwayne Jr. somewhere at the forefront, armed to the teeth like the Terminator. He's just always had it in him, and fans at some point pointed towards the possibility of him being that successor to his father, the Dog, and his brother Leland right there on his side like a shadow as he was for their father. But Dwayne was the perfect bondsman. He had no compromises and lived by a code he just couldn't break for anyone. It didn't matter whether it was a sibling or the man who taught him everything he knew. His popular fight with Beth was a major highlight of his time at his father's company, Dakin Bail Bonds, in Hawaii. And just like that, his relationship with Beth had always been on the rocks. Most fans watched for his public reaction after Beth died. However, he had been oddly quiet and far away from the spotlight. As expected, His silence divided the fan base. Some claimed that he had a right to stay silent if he didn't want a public response, and others just couldn't fathom a grudge against the dead. However, after Beth's demise, a Chapman family video, comprising Dog, Leland, Bonnie, and Gary, was released on YouTube, and Dwayne Jr. wasn't present. Obviously, it got fans talking, but Dwayne Jr. had been on television for too long to fall into PR hell. He completely avoided the noise and chose not to play into the media noise. But what exactly has he been up to away from the spotlight? According to popular reports, he has been operating his own bail bond business in Florida, completely away from the supervision of his father. Although he was not in the spotlight anymore, he kept his passion for bounty hunting alive. Although Dwayne rarely had any compromises, how has his more flexible brother fared in recent times? Leland Chapman, a compromise and half. Leland, just like Dwayne, had a heated argument with his stepmother Beth. For the most part, they saw eye to eye on only one thing: catching the fugitive, using whatever means necessary. However, Leland had his own ideas, and they were closely associated with his father's ideals. Strategy wasn't some strange concept to him, but he preferred a head-on approach to apprehending a fugitive, which, in his case, mostly involved the use of non-lethal force and a relentless search of perimeters. However, Beth had some creative imagination that mostly differed from Leland's. But just like Dwayne, he had a bust-up with Beth in 2011 over creative differences and contractual agreements. While Beth was a bit of a strategist, she was just much more of an enforcer when she intended to knuckle down. She was brazen and put her foot down firmly every time she needed to enforce her opinion. And right here was the flashpoint that lit a raging inferno. Words were said, bridges were burnt, and it seemed like it was finally over between Leland and the family. He severed ties with his father, his stepmom, and their show. However, Leland had a soft spot for their father, Dog. Although Beth had claimed that the kids definitely couldn't be working for their father and stepmother forever. At some point, you feel like there have got to be changes made, and we as parents have to be okay with letting our bird fly, she claimed. But Leland was a creature of habit. He loved working alongside his father. But there had to be some serious compromise, especially with Beth still in the picture. It wasn't long before his father sought his help to apprehend a dangerous fugitive. But there was a catch. Dog confessed that Leland wasn't his favorite son, but he probably loved him more than the other kids did, especially Dwayne Jr. Leland was pretty certain that his father's love was nowhere near how he felt about him, but he still worked for him and Beth. However, after Beth's demise, Dog confessed in a tell-all interview about her love for Leland. He claimed that she finally let him spread his wings and be the bounty hunter he wanted to be, albeit with a few restrictions. What could it hurt to have an itchy trigger finger on the team, especially when in a blind chase after a seriously dangerous fugitive? According to Dog, Leland became her hitman. And just like that, the tension was gone. Suddenly, she wanted more to do with Leland and his wife, Jamie. While it hadn't always been like that, losing Beth just when she finally started to warm up to Leland's wife was a huge blow to the Chapmans. Although the family seemed to have repaired burnt bridges, especially between Leland and Dog, the former still opted for having his own bonds company. Maybe freedom was always the price the Chapman kids needed to pay to find real happiness with Dog. Baby Lissa, the Chapman who chose a different life. Although the Chapman lads did find a different life outside the auspices of their father's supervision or Beth's corrections, the thrill of the hunt still stuck with them. So, they kept the bounty hunting life. Imagine being hunted by a family of bounty hunters. But while the boys could never really escape the thrill of the hunt, Lissa was a different beast. She had always wanted a life that was completely different from what her father and brothers introduced her to. Playing real-life Lara Croft wasn't really a future she wanted for herself. But just before her sudden pivot into the life of writing, Lissa was no slouch as a hunter herself. For years, fans watched her grow right in front of their eyes, with the cameras following her and documenting some of the most precious moments in her life. It's almost like a Bildungsroman of her life, unfolding in front of the whole world in real time. Unlike her brothers, Leland and Dwayne Jr., she did not choose the life of a bounty hunter as an adult. She was raised right in the middle of the hunt, watching her father, stepmother, and brother strategize about a fugitive from her teenage years was enough to shape her into the Chapman bondsman legacy. Right from the mid-2000s, she went on raids with the family and got used to the feeling of being a hunter. Chasing after another human being is like a bloodhound looking for its target. But after 8 to 10 years of hunting, she felt different about the career. While she had finally been molded into another variant of the Chapman hunters, she wanted a new life. Something with fewer guns, less danger, and less intrusion from her family. Maybe that was the real challenge for Lissa. Before she breathed a word of her person to someone else, they could tell who she was. The dog's daughter, Beth's stepdaughter, is a member of an iconic bounty hunting family. And right there was her real problem. She had no sense of mystery. Everyone knew who she was. However, it was a blessing as much as a curse. Right after the show ended in 2012, she ventured into business. At first, she started with a tanning salon and a clothing line. Then she ventured into something that completely encapsulated her person: writing. She penned a book, Walking on Eggshells, discovering strength and courage amid chaos. Speaking of chaos, she had been right there in the midst of chaos for most of her life, so the concept was nothing new to her. Yet she wasn't short of losing control now and then. For context, she was arrested in 2020 for harassment and refusing arrest. She had reportedly shoved a man and his girlfriend in Hawaii. Insiders claimed they could tell who she was and were completely against letting her get away with it. Maybe fame indeed is the Chapman curse. But amidst the uncertainty, the doubts, and the sad demise, what really is left of the Chapman family legacy? The legacy left behind. Before Dog the Bounty Hunter entered reality television in 2004, bounty hunting was rarely a mainstream idea. It was just one of the practices that never saw the light of day. Suddenly, bondsman and fugitive hunting became a part of the American television culture. Millions of viewers tuned in weekly, not only to watch Dog lead his pack and family in pursuit of a dangerous criminal, but also to see the dramatic rescues and heartwarming reunions that unfolded. For what seemed like the first time, America experienced what fearlessness could achieve without Hollywood special effects and prop guns. And just like that, Dog and the Chapman family left an indelible mark on reality television and the bondsman space. Dog was suddenly that model father for mid-thousands dads looking to build a business and have their family become a part of its legacy. But the television ratings and financial implications were merely a part of the story. Dog's idea of a legacy was an open secret since he started the show. His kids were an obviously important part of the bondsman business, and sources close to the Chapman family had often speculated that one of his sons would take over Duane bail bonds. However, year after year, the chances get slimmer, and fans begin to ask real questions about his legacy. For context, Dwayne Jr. and Leland already have bounty hunting companies of their own. Dwayne Jr. never publicly discussed his relationship with Beth, even after her sad demise. What exactly is left of the legacy he built in blood, sweat, and chaos? As the question continues to haunt long-term fans of the show, social media has not particularly been kind, churning rumor after rumor. Every social media post was heavily inspected. Silences were analyzed, and even interviews generated more speculations. Although the show ended, it would seem long-term fans just never moved on. But how would they? On May 7, 2026, Dog was spotted on the streets of Cobb County with the local police, helping them on a manhunt for an unidentified criminal. While that mostly wouldn't bother fans of the show in the mid-2000s, Dog is now 73 years old. After the dramatic hunt, he posted the video of himself, advising the apprehended criminal to change his life while he had the chance. Although the Cobb County Police Department recognized his efforts, fans had questions. Why would a man his age risk his life to be a part of a fugitive hunt? Was it a "hold on, I still got it" moment? Was it just another Hail Mary attempt to salvage whatever was left of his legacy? Whether fans would ever find the answer to this question, only time will tell. Do you think Dog's legacy might be hanging in the balance? Is there a chance that Leland or Dwayne Jr. ever comes back to the fold to own his company? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.